Okay, there we go. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Lots of people here, just admitting everybody in. Give us a wave if you can see me and Lee, okay?
HR News revealed allegations of sexual assault and harassment against the Bishop of Liverpool. He said he
Someone's got the news on in the background.
currently.
There's lots of people still coming in. Hang on, let me just keep admitting people.
I've got people messaging
Okay.
me. Where's the link? What's the link? It's like the one that's been in
Where's
the
the
chat.
link? It's in the group.
Yeah, it's in the chat for days.
Okay, hello everyone. We'll start. There's still more people joining, but we shall start. Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ask Becky. There's a lot of familiar faces here, which is fabulous, and there's a lot of new faces here too, which is good. So, for anyone that doesn't know, Ask Becky is a weekly, every other weekly Zoom session where we can drop in, have a chat, have a catch up. We can find out how lessons have gone, how tests have gone. If you've got any questions, you can come and ask everyone. And it just is a really nice community to be a part of. And we've got Lee with us tonight. Me and Lee, this is our third time now, isn't it, doing this?
Third time's a
You keep
charm.
coming back. We can't get rid of you. Keep coming back. Third time's the charm. There we go. So if you guys have any questions, pop them in the chat. We've got a few that have been sent in that we can start nattering about. But throughout the session, if you've got any questions at all for either of us or both of us, we tend to both give you a little bit of an answer on something. Stick it in the chat and we shall get to you. If you don't want to type it out, and if you just want to unmute and tell us, that is no problem. Just pop it in the chat that you want to say your question, or put the little Zoom hand up that you can put up as well. And we will absolutely get to you, which is no problem. Fabulous. So Lee, how are you today?
Very well. Just driven all the way up from Birmingham to get back home. Took 3 hours to get there this morning because the motorway was shut. But yeah, all good. Back in one piece, all happy and warm. And that's all you can ask for, really, isn't it, on a Wednesday?
It is, absolutely, yeah. It's been a nice sunny Wednesday here in Sheffield. We had a lesson, and about halfway through the lesson, my daughter's school phoned and she'd been sick and I had to go and get her. So that's been my Wednesday today. Never mind, it happens. Okay, so we're going to crack on then. We've not got any questions in the chat yet, so we're going to crack on with the ones that we have been sent in. So I'll not give out any names of the ones that have been sent in. I've not been told whether they want their names reading out, so I'll just read out the question. We'll do what we kind of always do, Lee, where we'll just take it in turns to say whatever about the question. Is that okay? Okay, so first question then. Is there any way out of the Bill Plant franchise without either failing the 3 attempts or at part 3 or completing the 12-month contract which renews upon passing the part 3? Over to you.
Am I going first? All right, okay.
First on this one.
Contract law would say no, because you've signed a contract and they've got you absolutely tied to it. This is a question for a solicitor, really, not us. See what they say. But generally, from what I've seen and sort of cases that have happened, if it goes to court, if you get that far, if you take it that far, and it's going to cost you money to do that, judges tend to look at the little guy versus the big company and help you out there sometimes. But it's a big gamble. So the easy answer is you've kind of got to just suck it up and you signed it. And if you did fail part 3 times, then if that would be a release, then hopefully that doesn't happen. Or maybe you hope it does happen. I don't know. But I certainly don't think it's a good idea to go and do part 3 when you're not ready just to get out of a contract, because then everyone else suffers and everyone's already suffering by waiting for a test. So I don't think people should be going for the test for the sake of their own personal contract problem. I think that's compounding the national problem.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Sorry, I'm still just letting people in. Yeah, I would agree with you. But sometimes, and I get it, as a PDI, if you feel like that's your only way out, I've known PDIs do that, purposefully go for their third attempt to fail to get out of paying such a big franchise. And yeah, I would agree with you. It's down to your contract and what's in it. And I guess for anyone here that maybe hasn't signed anything yet, maybe they're fairly early on in their journey, always check what you're signing and make sure you're happy with it. If you haven't signed anything yet, get to know who your trainers will be, get to know who your sponsor is, the local people around you that are going to be giving you support, because not naming any names, not naming any specific companies, but there are companies, and we all hear these stories on Facebook, where they're happy to take your money and then you just kind of feel like you haven't got that support. So for anyone that hasn't got to that point yet and doesn't feel like they're stuck, just really have a good look before you sign anything. And yeah, ask a solicitor, ask a friend to look over the contract, someone else to put some fresh eyes over it, perhaps.
Can I just jump back in there as well?
Certainly can.
With that as well, did the person that wrote the question say why they want to get out of the contract?
Financially getting in a mess, to which Bill Plant are no help whatsoever.
Yeah, so that suggests that they're not
It's
paying.
me, Lee, that's answered the question. It's me.
There he is. It was Mark.
So that kind of thing suggests. I mean, is it that you're not getting enough customers?
I've got the customers, probably not as much as what I could do, but obviously I don't want to overflood myself
Yeah,
with
that's
customers
the
and not have
problem.
the chance to do the training. You know what I mean? But then the high franchise fee that's coming down the line, it's
Yeah.
nowhere near what I were expecting.
Yeah, that's often the problem. And it's, I mean, financially, the amount of money that you can make versus your franchise fee, you should be kind of well off if you're doing it full time. But on the flip side of that, like you said, you don't want to be taking so many people on that you get flooded.
Yeah.
Because really part 3, you want to have time in between every single lesson to kind of reflect on how it went and how you did and what you need to change, and compare your own performance against the criteria that you're against on your part 3. Because otherwise you end up in a situation where you're doing lesson after lesson after lesson, making the same mistakes over and over, and it just
Over and
creates
over
bad
again.
habits. So yeah, I think probably the wisest advice would be speak to a solicitor and get them to look at it.
Yeah. One thing, I mean, because I did my part 3 about 3 weeks ago and I was unsuccessful. I scored 29 out of Warwick Way. And when I mentioned it to Bill Plant, you could just see it in the glee in their eyes, thinking, well, their response was, oh, well, no worries, better luck next time. Here's a bill, we'll send you for some more training.
Yeah.
And I says, well, surely that was it in the agreement, was that you're going to support me and give me the training required until I complete part 3. So, but no, it's not actually complete. You've had up until the completion of your first attempt. Any future is then further training. So
Yeah.
it's just yeah.
I definitely speak to someone that's more qualified than we are. Someone that knows contract law, and just see what they say. But from my experience, it's kind of, they will hold you to it, and most of the time it means that you can't really. They've got you basically. They've got you. And it's the same with a lot of the national driving schools as well. But yeah, definitely speak to someone and see what they say.
All right. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Mark. We've got another question, Lee. I've got a couple of people struggling to get in, and there's loads of people trying to get in. So I'm going to ask you this one and leave you to do this one while I just manage the chat and admitting people in. So the next question is from Nick, who's on tonight. So I'm sure Nick would be happy to unmute and tell you himself. Nick said he's just taken on a pupil who has no left limb below his elbow. He's got a steering ball, no issues with steering. He's able to use the indicators. However, he's going to struggle with demisters and wipers, things like that. Is there special dispensation with the DVSA for someone like him regarding the show me question?
The short answer is no, because if this person can't operate the wipers, for example, which is not one of the show me questions, but if they couldn't operate the wiper, then what on earth are they going to do when they're on their own, when it rains? So there is no special disconcert. I mean, you mentioned that they have a steering ball. When I used to work at RDAC, which is kind of like the regional assessment center, and they deal with people, they have like left foot accelerators and adaptations to the car deliberately for people with disabilities. The steering balls that I saw, the fancy ones, had like a little console on them. And you can indicate and you can horn and you can wipe and you can do all these other things. I don't know if that counts to demisting and stuff like that, but unfortunately the DBS say they want adaptations to the car, but there won't be any special disconcert. So if someone can't wipe, then why on earth are they trying to drive a car if they can't wipe it? That's how they would think, and in a way, rightly so, I think. But the steering balls that I saw, I don't think it had demisters on it, but I think it had wipers on it and indicators and horn. And the idea is you can do everything with that one hand. Could we? It's the right hand, isn't it, that is fully able. So I'm just trying to think where the wipers are. That's the right hand side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely we can do that, but it's not one of the show me questions anyway. I'm just trying to think of, are there any other show me questions that they wouldn't be able to do? So they can open the side window. That's that one. Demister, I suppose we could we reach down with, right hand across maybe? I mean, have you tried that with them? Have you tried to get them to do the show me questions, just you and them?
Not yet. I've only had a couple of lessons with him. We've had the chat about it maybe being an issue, and I've chatted with the school owner, and he said, yeah, it was an interesting question. I think he can do it all, but it would mean potentially taking his hand off the wheel. That's the issue. I mean, my car and the wipers are automatic, so it's more of a general ancillary control question. But I mean, he'd be able to do the horn, I think probably all right. But he did speak about the things that you were talking about, the getting a fancy steering ball with all the bells and whistles on it.
Yeah.
So he is potentially looking at that. So it's just really right now, while he's just basically learning to drive and everything, it was just that show me question where, and the school owner said to me, he said similar to you, that they probably won't give him any special treatment. He might just have to take the hit on the minor with the question.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I mean, in the lesson itself, I'm thinking of the driving test itself. If it was one of those days where your car steams up and they can't demist the car, they can't reach the demister, then they will most likely terminate the test.
Yeah,
that would be a physical intervention from the examiner if the examiner had to put the demister on. What
if you put it on right at the start of the test as a precaution?
No, that could be a way of doing it, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But from a show me tell me point of view, it's they might get a fault for it, but if it was necessary, then it might be serious. If they can't do it, he missed. So I mean, you'd have to just sort of, you need to just do an exercise and just see what they can do.
Yeah.
And then if there's anything they can't do, then if we could reach across and demist potentially. I mean, I worked with someone who had a similar sort of issue. How much of the left arm have they got?
It's literally to like about here, where the elbow is.
Right.
And that's it. Like I say, he puts himself in a position where he can lean forward and he can use indicators, no problem at all. He's absolutely fine with them. But it's just the demister buttons for me. There's little button underneath the central, where the central console is, and there's absolutely no way he could do it with precision.
Yeah,
that's the only thing. I mean, I could put something on them to make it, I don't know, a little bit easier for him to hit them. But they're my main concern. I think he could do the window. I think he could do, but then obviously put on the dipped headlights. He won't be able to do that because unless he'd have to take his hand off the wheel. That's the thing, and obviously that would be potentially dangerous. But again, my lights are automatic as well, so they come on when it's dark and etc. But I mean, someone would say, well, if he needed to do any of that, he could pull over and do it. But then another person would say, well, what if he's on a motorway? and it's
Yeah.
just it's more of a stopgap thing really until he gets his own car with his his all the stuff they can do with it.
I mean, something that you could do, I think it's a good idea, is contact the test centre. I've done that plenty of times where I've contacted the test centre to speak to the senior examiner and put these questions to the, get it from the horse's mouth. It's probably your best bet.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, but I just want to see what everyone else thought as well. Again, it's not just for his test, or just stuff like that where I didn't know how much you could put on your steering ball to give you full control of the car. It's the first time I've had someone like that as a pupil, so it just completely did me. I had no idea. I'm like, I don't know.
Is Becky back?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Amazing. Well done. Has anyone else got any advice for Nick? Has anyone come across anything like that before? No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll go for the first question that we got in the chat then. So, planning on doing effective use of mirrors for my part 3. Is it okay to start off in quiet areas, and if progress is made, make it more challenging by taking it to more busy areas? Thank you, Solma, for your question. I'll start with this one, I guess.
Can you read it again? I weren't listening. Can you read it again? I do that
Fine,
sometimes.
yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine. Planning on doing effective use of mirrors for my part 3. Is it okay to start off in quiet areas, and if progress is made, make it more challenging by taking to more busy areas? So I guess mirrors we do everywhere, right? Whether it's quiet or busy. It depends on how much help your learner needs to do their mirrors. If they're needing you to take a bit of responsibility for some other things so that they can concentrate on mirrors, you probably would want them in a quieter area so that they've got the room and the space to focus on them and to make sure that they've got that understanding on them. And when you're starting to hand over a bit more responsibility, then up the challenge by taking them to some busier areas. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Depends on what your learner needs in that moment at that time. You might start off in an area where you think your learner can handle it because that's what you were looking at last week. And actually, today's not the day. It's part 3. They're nervous. They're scared because there's an examiner sat in the back. And actually, maybe you do need to go somewhere quieter where you can have a bit more of the responsibility. Or potentially you can stay where you are, but you can help them. You can manage the risk around their goal by helping them with other bits so that they can focus on the mirrors. It completely depends on what your learner needs. And it depends on where the issue with mirrors is. Is it an issue everywhere? Have they got an issue with awareness in general everywhere? Or is it something like they are struggling with mirrors on roundabouts because they are struggling with looking everywhere? Or it depends on whether it's a awareness issue in general or whether it's a location issue and you need to use a specific location. If that makes sense. Lee?
Yeah, who sent that question in?
Solma.
Right. So the first thing I'd want to know is it all the mirrors all the time? Is it certain mirrors in certain situations? Your plan needs to be specific. So, it's unlikely that they're going to not have to. They're probably not missing mirrors every time for everything. When are they missing mirrors, and what's causing them to miss the mirrors? Is it because they don't know they need to check them? Is it because they don't understand why they've got to check them? Is it because their attitude is it's not a big deal? Is it because they're too fast? What's causing that? Because it's the thing that's causing it that you'd need to work on. Like Becky said, if it's an awareness thing, if we need to be more aware of our surroundings, then the mirrors is kind of, a big part of that. But there's other things in there as well, isn't there? So yeah.
Solma's just put in the chat that they haven't done roundabouts yet, but they're just forgetting their mirrors, all of them. And for me, Solma, if they're forgetting them, then they haven't learned why they need to do them. They're actually just forgetting that you've given them an instruction to check their mirrors. It might mean that you need to help them get their light bulb moment to go, that's why I need to check them. If a pupil is forgetting something you've told them, it's because they don't understand it and know it enough to understand why they need to check them. It might be that you need to be asking some deeper learning questions at the side of the road. Who could be around you? Where could they be? What specifically could happen? What would your plan be if they were there? How would you judge that someone was around you? And what would you do about it? you want to get them to go, oh, right, I get it now. That's why I check my mirrors, because once they understand the risk in it, they're less likely to forget it. It's then not your idea and the thing that they're forgetting because of you. It's their idea that they need to remember them. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and just kind of on the kind of more directly with the question that was asked, you've got to think about, where is the best location for them to work on it, and the best location is probably where they're missing them. So, where is it happening? Is it happening when we're moving off? Is it happening when we're approaching a junction? Is it happening when we're overtaking parked cars? Is it happening when we're braking for something in front that's making us brake? And they would be the best place. But like Becky kind of said in the first bit, the key thing is that the practice area and everything that you're doing should fit that learner's current ability at that point. So if it's too easy, then there's no challenge. And if it's too hard, they're going to spend all the time, trying to not die while you're working on it. And then when they're in that survival mode, there's no room for learning. So you've got to the lesson has to fit their current ability. So only kind of where they're up to. But like Becky said, it could be that their current ability dips because of the pressure of the day. So they'll need, you need to simplify it and work on it somewhere more simple. But if they're smashing it, then you need to adapt it and make it more difficult and then use it in different situations. But quite often with mirrors, it tends to be, if they're forgetting all the time, it's probably because they've been told to do them. So, if the first lesson begins where you say to your learner, when you're turning left or signaling left, you need your left mirror, and when you're turning right or signaling right, you need your right mirror. They have to remember that. But if you start a first lesson and say to them, maybe get a diagram out and stick a car on it and say, right, so what type of road user could fit down that left-hand side? And your learner's going to go, well, maybe a cyclist. And then you'd say, well, out of these 3 mirrors that you've got, which one would be the one that would best allow you to see that cyclist? And the learner's going to go, well, yeah, the left mirror. So they're never going to have to remember what you'd said because you didn't say anything, and they figured it out for themselves. People tend to forget what they've been told. And if your primary way of teaching is telling and hoping they remember, then it's often not a surprise that they do forget.
Hopefully that helps, Solma. Let us know if there's anything else to that one. Okay, next question in the chat. Can I book a part 3 without going on a pink license? Your turn firstly.
Yeah, of course you can. As soon as you've passed your part 2, you're absolutely fine to go ahead and book your part 3. The trainee license, the pink badge, has pros and cons. So, the pro of the pink license is that you get paid for doing the job, practicing for your exam. The con with it is that sometimes that makes people feel more pressured because the learner is paying for the lesson, so you feel a bit more under pressure and it stresses you out. If you were training people for free, then you wouldn't have that pressure. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. They're learning from you, you're practicing on them, so everyone wins. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but yeah, to answer the question, there is literally 0 amount of hours that you need to do after you pass your part 2 to book your part 3. But you'd be literally throwing, your money away if you did that. When I did the part 3 17 years ago, it was a different test. It was, the examiner pretended to be a learner. So I didn't do any work with any learners. I never had one learner or taught any learners at all until after I'd qualified. But I didn't need to because the exam was a role play. My training was role play and my exam was role play. But now, on your part 3, you have to execute a client-centered lesson with a learner. Yet you're supposed, you have to be good at executing client-centered lessons with real people. So the key thing is you need practice, lots of it, whether that's for free, without the pressure of someone being, someone paying for the lesson, or whether you have that pressure and you get paid for it. It's up to you, but the key thing is you need practice. But the short answer is no, you don't need any.
You took a really short answer there and made it beautifully long. I love that. Well done. Yeah, there's nothing else to add on that. You've covered it all. Yeah, there's no legislation that says you have to have any training for any of the qualifying tests unless you're on a trainee license. Then that's when the legislation comes in. Okay, next question. I've just started on a pink license. My theory is expiring in August. After how many months would you recommend to have a go at part 3?
It's you first this time, isn't it?
No.
Yes,
Yes.
it
Oh, I don't
definitely
know.
is.
Hang on. Let me just admit more people in. For anyone new that's coming in, if you can just mute your microphones, please, that would be fabulous.
If you go into where I'm sure if you go into participants, you can actually put a thing where it mutes everyone when they come in. That's what I do.
Hopefully everybody here by now knows how awful I am with technology. We'll try that. We'll try that on round 4. We'll see how we can do that with round 4. Bear with me because I've lost where the chat section is. Okay, just started on a pink license and my theory is expiring in August. After how many months would you recommend to have a go at part 3? There's no right or wrong. If you're on your pink license, make sure that you've done your additional training, your 20 hours additional training before you book your part 3. That's one of the terms and conditions of the trainee license. And that needs to be within the first 12 weeks or before your first attempt at part 3. It depends on you. It depends on when you feel ready to give it a go. I wouldn't want to. I know you've got a bit of a time limit because your theory is expiring in August, and I know there's an issue with tests across the country. But I definitely wouldn't book it to have a go. Just really try and make sure that you're feeling prepared for it. Yeah, that would kind of be my advice on that one. Anything from you, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, having a go. Would you let a learner have a go at a test? No, you wouldn't. So you need to be, prepared. You need to put the hours in to make sure you are ready. In terms of booking it, you'll need to book it, bearing in mind that there's a waiting list. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you know this, Becky. I'm pretty sure if your theory runs out, but you book your test and the test date is after your theory runs out, that the theory would extend until the moment the test finishes. I'm pretty sure they would do that.
Yeah, the theory doesn't extend. The theory is 2 years. But if you've booked your part 3 before your theory expires, that they will honour that as long as you've booked it before your part 3, before your part 1 expires. Yeah.
So it'd probably be best to get lots of training in the meantime and then book it quite late on in the day to maximize this. You've got a short amount of time. You want to maximize it, then book it quite late.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, you've got your hand up. Hello, welcome. Do you want to unmute?
Hiya. Hello, Lee.
Hi.
I did my part 3, failed first time, and then I had 2 sessions with Lee, and it was the best thing I did. Just have that one-to-one. He didn't really tell you what to do. He got the questions out of you that you should be doing. And the biggest thing that I learned from him is don't practice anything with a pupil. Because if it looks practiced, it's going to feel practiced, and then something goes wrong, and then you get stuck. So the best advice Lee gave me was just take it as a normal driving lesson, work on the thing that the pupil needs to do. And then once they've done that, ask them what they want to do next. Don't make it about you doing your test. Just make it about them doing a driving lesson, and then it'll flow. And that's the best advice Lee gave me. And the second time round, I passed it. And so when I did my standard check, I had another couple of hours lesson with Lee, one-to-one, just going over the same stuff. And again, I passed it. So don't make it about you and your driving test. Make it about your part 3 strokes, standard check. Make it about what the pupil does, and it'll just flow. And then just ask lots of questions. Why, what, when, where, how. Don't tell them what to do. Ask them how they want to do it. And so then it becomes about you not being a instructed lesson, more of a like their guided lesson. So that was a bit of advice that I got from Lee, and it was worth it. Yeah, it cost me sort of 6 hours. Was it 6 hours or 3 hours? 1 hour or 2 hours?
I think it was 6 hours. Yeah.
But yeah, 6 hours.
That's really good advice to everyone, because that's the problem when people book the part 3. It's like there's a part of your brain that sees that as a big deal, like a big future event. So it could be like a wedding or a birthday party or a holiday. So when you book your part 3, your brain will be saying, come on, you need to plan the hell out of it. You need to plan every little detail of it because it's important, really important. But trying to book your part 3 is like trying to book a holiday, booking a flight, booking a hotel, but not knowing where you're going. You just can't do it. And like Dave said, if you try to put on a show, if you say to your learner, you do this and then I'll say this, and then, under pressure, your learner's probably going to forget their lines. And you've got to remember that these examiners, these are not new examiners. These are senior examiners. This is not, your part 3 is not their first rodeo, and they know they can smell it a mile off if you try it. You're just throwing your money away. So yeah, like Dave said, just it's exactly the same as a driving lesson. And if any of your trainers have said that the part 3 is not like a normal lesson, then, or if anyone says to you that the part 3 is not like a normal lesson, then that's come from the mouth of someone that does it wrong every day. Because ultimately, if you work in the way that meets the criteria every day, and then you go for your part 3 or a standards check, you're doing the same thing you do every day for less time, easy peasy. But if you try to make it out that it's something else, then you're only making it more difficult for yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Ruth, you've got your hand up. Thank you. Ruth,
Yeah,
you've got your hand
hiya.
up.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with all of that because I passed on my 3rd attempt after having sessions with Lee. And when I got into my 3rd attempt, I took Lee's advice and I was so laid back because I was so focused on the student and their need that we both forgot the examiner was there because we got so engrossed in the lesson, we had to be reminded to go back to the test centre. So, but the first 2 times I'd done it were exactly as Lee had said, were the prime examples of what not to do.
It's your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain's messing with you. Your brain is saying, "Come on,
Yeah.
you've got to plan every detail."
Yeah.
And they want it has to start right. It has to be based on what the learner needs, not what you want to teach. But as soon as you're out the car park, then it's got to stay right. And if you've got this big plan in your head of what you're going to do for 40 minutes, your learner starts making new mistakes, which create learning opportunities. And if we don't deal with these things, then that learning didn't take place. I went out with someone last week, and I needed the loo really bad, right? This happens. I drink a lot of water since I bought my Peloton. Drink a lot of water. And I were in the back of a car, and we saw McDonald's, and I said, can you just pull into there because I need the loo really bad? Learner goes into the McDonald's, there's a car behind, and he turns straight into a parking space on the right with no indicator at all. And the car behind is like beeping the horn and shouting obscenities. So I jumped out, went to the loo, came back, did not have the conversation about this signaling thing. And if I hadn't have brought it up, and we went through it all in terms of why did they not know that you were going to do that sudden swerve to the right, and what could have happened, and what's the risk, and what would you do better next time, that learning wouldn't have taken place if we hadn't have had that conversation. And actually, me needing the loo actually created an opportunity for that learner to learn about when you do and don't need a signal when you're bare parking. But if that isn't seized upon by the instructor, learning doesn't take place. And what is the examiner looking for when you turn up for your part 3 is, did learning take place?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ruth. Kaz, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Hi. So I've done hundreds of hours of reading and passed my part 2 after several cancellations and 1 attempt in December. Yay! Finally got there. I'm hoping to go pink through a national franchise LDC because I love their teaching system. I'm getting my head wrapped around the how to be and when to be looking at the road and when to be looking at the student, and when my biggest problem is, how do I make sure that obviously we've got to manage the risk by visually looking around the 360s part of the car, but we also need to be looking at the students' feet and eyes and hands. How do you, when you're learning this, do you break it down and say, right, I'm going to learn how to watch the road first and then I'm going to watch them? Or do you look at them and then work out how you add the looking at the road bit in? I'm really struggling with that bit. And my trainer's brilliant, but I'm not quite getting it from him. So I'm looking at alternative ways to kind of hear what I've got to do. Because I know I'm very 360 aware in my car and always have been. But obviously I need to be 360 aware and make sure that they're 360 aware and not miss things. Like in a recent lesson, I missed a ghost island that you're meant to pull into to turn right, and my guy was like, you didn't notice it? And I was like, no, because I was watching the bus coming towards me and I thought my student was going to go, and that was more important at the time than me watching what's on the road, because my bus was coming towards us. And although I hadn't taken him out before, so he was a new driver with a few hours experience. So how do we get there? Or is that just time and patience?
I remember when I was, I think I don't know how old I was, but I remember always hearing from adults in my life saying, I've got eyes in the back of my head. I can see what you're up to in the living room and stuff like that. And I used to think, no, they haven't. How can they see me? And us as instructors, it's like we've got to be owls. We've got to have that 360 vision where we can turn our heads all the time. And it's definitely a skill that develops better and gets better with practice and with experience. When your learner is driving, you need to be watching your learner to do what you would be doing at that moment. So say, for example, you have, you've just given the example of there was a bus coming towards you and then you've missed is it a right filter box that you've missed?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you see the bus, don't stare at the bus. The next step, if you've seen it, is to see if your pupil's seen it. So you would then want to be using your peripheral vision as much as you can. As soon as you see something that could develop, something that could happen, take your eyes back off that and glance at your pupil. And all of us here, hopefully everyone here's done part 2 or is working towards part 2. We've all got the ability at glancing. We all do that. We glance on a roundabout. We glance everywhere when we drive. We're all experienced drivers. So take that skill that you've got of glancing and put it into now your instructor role as a new skill of glancing. We've got to, instead of having tunnel vision like that, you've got to have that funnel vision and open up your eyes as much as you can. I'm a big fan of an eye mirror as well. I know some people don't like it, and that's totally fine. There is nothing in the competencies, was the trainer aware of the surroundings and the pupil's actions, that says you can't use an eye mirror. If it is a tool that helps you be aware, you are absolutely allowed to use one. So for example, if we were traveling down a road and I see a bus coming and I've seen it and I would start reacting, I then glance in my eye mirror, and while I'm glancing at that, I can still see the bus in my peripheral vision. I can still see my pupils' hands and their knees and things that they're going to do if they're going for the brake and stuff in my peripheral vision. When it comes to being able to look everywhere and look at the pupil, watching the pupil to do what you would be doing in that moment. So let's say you give your learner an instruction at the end of the road, turn left. Before the words have even left your mouth, you need to have checked around you and made sure it's safe. And then before the words have left your mouth, you need to be looking at your pupil. Because if you're still looking ahead or looking in the mirrors when you say, right, at the end of the road, turn left, and then you look at your pupil, you might miss them doing their mirrors. The second you start talking, they might start doing their checks and having a look around them. So making sure that you've done all your outside stuff first so that you can pay attention via glancing, because we don't want to stare at them. We want to be able to look everywhere. And then watching their eyes, hands, feet, hands, eyes to make sure they're doing what they should. But it is a skill that comes with practice, making sure that when you're at a junction, you're not looking left and right as you would as a driver. You're looking at your learner doing it, making sure that they do their blind spot check first and then you check over your shoulder, because if you do it first, you're going to prompt them to do it. So yeah, it will develop over time. Lee?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, because a lot of people struggle with this, especially guys. And the one word that you need to be good at is anticipation. It's really, really important. So you're right, you can't look everywhere. You know, if I'm looking at the road, I'm going to miss their mirror faults. If I'm looking at their eyes, I'm going to miss their positional faults. I can't look in 2 places at once. And that's the problem. But the key thing is you've got to get your eyes up the road and look really far ahead. But more importantly, you've got to get your mind up there as well. Because as human beings, we're really good at seeing things we're looking for. Like if you ordered a new car, you won't stop seeing that model of car around, you know, and there was the same amount of them yesterday, but you didn't notice it because you weren't looking for it. So the key thing is to look for the mistakes. So the two most common ones that I see around the country that instructors don't notice, right? One is when a learner is approaching parked cars and they steer around the parked cars, but they didn't check the right mirror.
Yeah.
And the number one is when something ahead of them makes them brake. So it could be a red light, it could be a zebra crossing, it could be queuing traffic. And the learner brakes and they don't check the centre mirror to see what's behind them, and the instructor doesn't see it. So it's really important that you're always thinking ahead. So if you see parked cars on the left, you should be thinking they might not check their right mirror. So I'm going to make a little plan in my head, which is I'm going to watch them as we approach them parked cars because I'm thinking about it. And it'd be the same if you're approaching a green light, for example. If you're looking at that light and you're thinking it's on green, it might change to red. And if it does, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at their eyes.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for this is what the DVSA call the expected outcome. Like Becky said, they're looking for them to do it right. They're looking for a certain series of events. So for a red light, it should be centre mirror brake or a centre mirror clutch brake if you're in a manual car. And you will either see that or you will not see that. But you won't see it if you're not looking for it. So if you're thinking ahead, you know, looking ahead is key. So your eyes should be on kind of full beam. Your learner's eyes will always be on dip beam. So you know, they always look down the bonnet. You've got to get your eyes up there. And you've got to be thinking about what should they be doing next? And where do I need to look in order to see what they should be doing next?
Okay.
And if they'll either do what they should be doing or they won't. And that's how you can identify mistakes that you can turn into learning outcomes.
Just as an example, sorry, Lee. So if you're noticing that they're getting to the pull out and you know they've not checked, would you then prompt, or would you wait until they've not done it and then get them to pull in and discuss it?
Depends what it is. So in that example, you know, where they've missed the right mirror for overtaking a parked car, you're watching for it to happen. So if they steer, you would know if it's safe for them to move out. You're doing your 360 observations, like you said. But if they don't check it, then you'd mention it, because if you don't mention it, you might as well have not seen it.
Yeah.
Everything that you don't say, the learner will always think that it must have been fine because she didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're using those mistakes as opportunities to get learning to take place. When you're approaching junctions, that's the easy one, you know, because if you said to a learner at the traffic lights, I would like you to turn, you've said 10 words and they don't know where they're going. So you can use all that time to be taken in your observations of ahead and behind. But the moment you say the word left, you should be looking at their eyes. And you only really need to look at their eyes for the time it takes them to go centre mirror, left signal. And then your eyes are straight back on the road, ready for to check out what their position is doing. Yeah. So if you look at them at the right time, you're only actually looking at them for a short space of time. And then your eyes are back on the road, managing the risk again. But like I said, the key thing is to anticipate what mistakes could happen. And there's two ways you can do that. One is by looking really far ahead. And the other one, it's your bloody route. You know, you're going where you're taking them. So you know where everything is. You know where the parked cars tend to be. You know where the zebra crossings tend to be. You know where the roundabouts and traffic lights tend to be. So you can, in advance, predict and think about what mistakes they might make in them places. If you're thinking about it, you'll look for it. And if you look for it, you'll see it.
Right. So especially on your part 3, you need a route that you know, like the back of your hand with your blindfold on on a dark night, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you need to know the area, of course, but you also need to think about other areas that you'd take them for other mistakes. So, for example, if on your practice area there's you've got to turn right into a side road, and you're thinking, well, maybe, because you're anticipating, maybe they'll try and turn when it's unsafe. You know, so where would I park them up if they did that there? Where would I park them up? What questions would I ask? Where would we go to work on it? How could I loop back around to do that again? And again, it's anticipation. If you always think they're going to do it wrong, nothing ever catches you out.
Right. So what my dad used to say, just think everybody doesn't know what they're doing when they get in a car, and you wouldn't go far wrong.
That's the other thing that your brain will mess you up with. Like we said, your brain will say, come on, you need to plan the hell out of your part 3.
Yeah, no.
The other thing it'll do is when you take, the person that you're going to choose for your part 3 is not a brand new learner. You've picked them for a reason. They're probably your favorite learner. So you've developed a trust of them and their driving. And if you trust their driving, everything they do wrong will be a surprise. If you're expecting people to do it wrong, it's a lovely surprise when they do it right. And when they do it wrong, it's what you're expecting. That also means you'll be looking for the fault that you think might happen. And if you're looking for it, you'll see it. So anticipation is massive. For me, that's a skill that people should be developing on part 2 because it's a transferable skill.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people, when they go on part 2, get their faults fixed and they get treated like learner drivers. What part 2 should be about is developing these transferable skills like forward planning, like anticipation, like awareness that you can use when you sat in the passenger seat.
Yeah. I mean, putting those into, the forward planning, I do, the awareness, I do. It's just hearing it coming. And again, sometimes you're just hearing the same trainer so often that you're not hearing what they're saying because you kind of, I'm a teacher, I know what it's like. You could switch off after a while. So it's nice to hear it. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's actually made more sense in my head. So thank you both very much. I will now try and unmute myself. Hang on.
Thank you, Kaz. Okay, next question we've got. I have popped a message in the chat, guys. We're not going to be able to get through all of these, but I'm pretty sure we'll be back again for another one in the near future. The next question, Lee, is there something like a flow chart for a part 3? So like a fail-safe procedure or a method whereby I know I've done exactly what I needed to, so I can remove ambiguity?
Yeah, it's called the ADI 1. And that's the document in which your exam is based on. It scares me how many people I speak to who are on the 3rd attempt that have no understanding of what the ADI 1 is. And it's effectively, the guidance that the examiners are given to go and mark your part 3. And it contains a list of effectively do's and don'ts for every one of the 17 competencies. And it says, this is what competence looks like, and this is what competence doesn't look like. And there's nothing better than that, than anything else that anyone will ever give you, because it's from the DVSA, it's from the horse's mouth. If you do these things more often than you do these things, then you'll get a B grade. If you do all of this and none of that, then you'll get an A. And if you do that stuff, you'll fail. And it's really black and white. Obviously, once you read the ADI 1 and you've studied that criteria, some of it doesn't make sense. So you can get someone like me or Becky, to kind of translate it into normal language. But effectively, it's the perfect document because it's like a behind the curtain look. How do they judge the part 3? And it will give you all the advice you need. This is what we want. This is what we don't want for every single one of the 17 competencies.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I did a workshop last night called An Introduction to the Competencies, and it's I remember being a PDI and I remember looking at them thinking that they just looked like Egyptian hieroglyphics to me. They just made no sense whatsoever. But actually it is all in there. It can take a bit of reading, but it does say indications of competence, indications of lack of competence. So do this, you'll pass, do this, you won't, kind of thing. So that's kind of your fail-safe procedure. Go through that and interpret it. But remember that you're there to help them learn stuff, and you're there to help them learn stuff that you already know. So helping them, facilitate them learning something and just keep them safe. It sounds simple, I know, but make sure you're watching them correctly. Make sure you're asking them to find out what they know about stuff. And you're just there to fill in the gaps and help them have a light bulb moment and have that moment where they can go, yeah, I've got this. That's kind of what we're looking for. Our next question was one that we got sent in. When asking your learner questions on the move, either probing questions as a result of a fault or just general questions, at what point do you stop digging deeper? Asking questions can be distracting. So how do you balance the need for questions and chat versus allowing conversation? I don't know if you're still there, Lee. I think you're still there having a drink of your tea. So I'll go first with this one.
I'm just putting the DT1 in the chat for people.
Perfect.
If you click on that link, it'll open it. And the section that you want is section 3.24. And
Do you mean the ADI one, Lee?
Yeah, sorry, the ADI one.
Yeah, you've put the DT one in. Oh, no, you haven't. You've put the ADI one, but you've called it the DT one.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So yeah, that's the ADI one. And section 3.24 is where you get that kind of do's and don'ts breakdown of all the competencies.
Perfect. Okay, so this question, I'm just going to read it out one more time. When asking your learner questions on the move, at what point do you stop digging deeper? That's kind of the crux of the question here. It depends a lot on your learner. Only you know your learner and what they're capable of and what their abilities are. If something has happened that you need to ask them a question on, it depends on what else is going on. So let's say that your learner has just messed up a roundabout. Maybe they've nearly killed you. You've had to intervene. You've had to get everyone safe again, sorted. You've then got another roundabout coming up in 200 yards. We're not going to ask something then because that's definitely way too distracting. We're going to manage the situation, control it, keep everyone safe, and then pull them over. If you've got a learner who has just done something on a roundabout, maybe they've nearly killed you, but they have fixed it themselves. They've said, oh my God, I just did this and I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. And on this next one, Becky, I'm going to show you that I know it. That's okay. We can let them show us. And then when we've got a bit of open space, if this is a learner that's shown you they've got the knowledge and understanding, you can then ask them a couple of deeper questions, as long as nothing else is going on. If you've got a learner who is struggling and it looks like they're drowning, we don't want to ask them open questions on the move, deeper learning questions on the move. We want to be asking them questions to keep everything safe and control the situation. Some closed questions, some leading questions, questions that have got a command embedded in them, things like that to keep it safe. And then when it's safe, pull them over to do the deeper stuff. Deeper learning and that critical thinking learning is usually best at the side of the road, because that's where they've got the time and the space to have a little bit of silence in between your question and their answer so that they can think. But it does depend on your learner. If you've got a learner who is driving okay, you can ask them a question. There is time, there's space, you're managing the risk. That's okay. If you've got 4 miles between you and the next roundabout and it's open and it's clear and they're driving beautifully and you're watching them while you ask a question, they might be a learner who can answer on the move. If they're not, because you know them better than anyone, don't ask it on the move. You don't want to ask something. But also there's nothing wrong with, if you do ask something specifically on your part for your standards check, if you do find yourself asking a question and you think, bugger, I shouldn't have asked that, that's the wrong time, just own that. The examiners would prefer to hear you say, actually, just ignore me a minute, I shouldn't have asked that, I'd like you to concentrate on this. They prefer you to not ask it and be thinking in your head, oh my God, I shouldn't have asked that, that's going to distract them. And then your learner's trying to answer you whilst navigating whatever's going on. If you've got it wrong, if you've asked something and it's the wrong time, own it. Just say, actually, I'm going to shut up a minute. I'd like you to concentrate on this, and then we'll talk about that. Lee, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's different questions that you can ask your learner, isn't there? And for me, if you split them up into 2, there's the ones that you're asking about the present and the future, and there's the ones that you're asking about the past. So if you're asking your learner, what signs can you see ahead? What's your plan for blah, blah, blah? And that's often the mistake that people make with independent. They think independent is silence, where you're going to sit there and the learner's going to sit there in silence. And silent independent kind of creates a problem, because the learner's going to be making decisions in their mind and you're not going to know what those decisions are until they suddenly do them. And in our job, the only suddenly is what you didn't know or what you weren't anticipating. So sometimes, you're going to be asking questions like, what's the plan for blah, blah, blah. So the example I often use is, parked cars on both sides. There's a car coming through the other way and your learner's approaching this scenario. So they could be about to stop behind the first car, or they could be about to go through the gap and make you jump on the pedals. That's in your best interest to find out what that is, what decision they've made. So even during an independent section, you could say, are you planning to stop or go here? Or what's the plan for the white car here? And these questions are not going to distract them. They're going to help you manage the risk in a proactive way. Your risk management is being scored like that. So if you don't say anything and then slam on the brake, you score the lowest mark, just like on your hazard perception if you react late. But if you ask a question to find out what they're thinking, what they've seen, what they're planning to do next, then you can manage the risk at a proactive level. So those questions are really important. And they don't distract the learner because they're about what's going on down there. But going back to the original question, if you're getting in your learner's ear and asking them about back at that roundabout, blah, 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 then you're taking your learner's mind into the past. And if you do that, they're not thinking about the present and the future. So, the DVSA have always been very clear on this, that distraction is distraction. So if you're going to be in your learner's ear and it's going to distract them, you might as well have put a phone in the hand and said, watch this funny cat video. You would never do that. So distraction is distraction. So the side of the road is the best place for that. That question perhaps comes from a place. And we all know the most common question asked on part 3 is, oh, is it true that I've got to keep the wheels turning for 40 minutes? Which is nonsense. And it always has been. So, 40 minutes of the wheels turning means you've got a 45-minute exam to do, and they want to see a driving lesson in there for 40 minutes, which means you've got 5 spare minutes, 2 minutes, let's say at the beginning, 3 minutes at the end for a debrief. In between, you've got a 40-minute thing. But that doesn't mean you can't stop for 40 minutes, So what the DVSA say is that learning happens through self-reflection. Self-reflection happens at the side of the road. So they want to see the balance on the part 3 between theory and practice. That's what the guidance says. That's what it says in the ADI 1. We want to see the balance between theory and practice. So if learning takes place through conversations at the side of the road, followed by practice of what they've learned on the road, straight after that, that's the balance between theory and practice. But that kind of question that has been asked today tends to come from this place of, I've been told I can't stop and I've got to keep the wheels turning. You've got to use coaching, you've got to be client-centered. The number one thing of all is you've got to manage the risk. So like Becky said, manage the risk first and then park up and get the learning to take place through self-reflection. Why do they think it happened that? What led to that? What's their thoughts on why that happened? If we continue to do that, what could be the risk if we continue to do it in that way? What could that scenario bring us if we continue to do it? And what could we do differently in light of that risk to make it safer and make it, do it differently? So the learning can take place through that conversation. And then once they've reflected and determined what is the better course of action, then we can put a little plan together and work on it on the move. So learning over there, practice over there, you've got to get the balance right. But that question often comes from this idea that you've got to keep the wheels turning for 40 minutes, and people say that on Facebook all the time. And that's often the problem, with this current crop of PDIs that we have. They tend to not read the guidance. They tend to listen to what people on Facebook say. Karen on Facebook says you've got to keep the wheels turning for 40 minutes. The guidance says they want the balance between theory and practice. That doesn't get read. And then you end up people where we start distracting the learner on the move and actually heightening the one thing that you're there to manage, which is the risk.
Yeah,
That's a bit of a rant. I apologize. That was a bit of a rant.
It's all right. You rant away. Kaz, you've got a lot of people wanting that document that you're talking about. Feel free to post it in the empathetic group or send it me and I can add it as a file in the group if you want. Or if you're happy for people to, they can contact you afterwards to email.
Really expect 3,501 people to do that. So it might be better, just from a professional point of view, because I don't want to step on toes. If you can drop me an email to me, I'll send it to you. You check you're happy with it, and then perhaps you can send it out to everybody that's asked. Because what I don't want to do is, if I've missed something or I've got it wrong, and then I look like an umpty.
Oh, don't be silly. I'm sure it is perfectly useful. I'm just writing your email down. And we'll sort that out so that everyone can then get it from the group. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. And if you're happy with it, I mean, make it, because we're all in this together, and
absolutely.
I want to make sure that it's right and you're happy with it. I only expected 1 or 2 people to say that would be cool, but I've been using it as part of my feeding myself back reflection. Did I do that? Maybe. And I'm probably more harsh than my trainer is. So I read it and I think, no, actually, I probably didn't, but I might have done that. And it gives me a better idea of whether I can tick off R1, 2, 3, 4 and T1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. So yeah, I'll send it across to you if you drop me an email, and then you can make sure you're happy with it first.
That's lovely, thank you. I think we're all quite critical of ourselves, aren't we? We're all really harsh on ourselves, but reflecting, for anyone that's a PDI, reflecting is such a big part of your journey. For anyone that isn't keeping any sort of self-reflection, really do. Even if you have to record yourself with a learner, it's really awkward watching yourself back, but that's the best reflection you can do, watching yourself back and listening to the way you talk. Okay, so it's 8 o'clock. We're going to finish it there. Thank you, Lee, for joining me again. Have you loved it?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thanks for inviting me on again.
I think we have to do another one pretty soon by the looks of it. I think everyone would agree with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Have a great Wednesday, everyone, and we will see you all soon. Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Becky, just a quick one before you disappear. Will this be recorded and sent out to us all? Or?
It's been recorded. I'm going to stick it on YouTube, on my YouTube, and I'll stick the link in the group so that everyone can find it.
Thank you very much.
The other sessions that we've done, that me and Lee have done, are already on my YouTube available. I'll pop them in the group as well so everyone can find them.
Thanks very much, Becky. Have a good evening.
No
Thank
worries,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.